Okay. All right, welcome everybody to Animal Science News Live. Today's topic is coral bleaching caused by climate change. And here is my guest host, scientist Mel. Yep. Hi, Mel.
Hi,
How are you, Mel?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good too. I'm happy to have you as a guest host. Can you explain something about yourself and also your channel?
Okay,
And
sure.
I'll check to make sure all the technology stuff's working.
Okay, cool. So, I'm a science educator, science communicator, a scientist. My channel, we talk about all kinds of different things. I,
All right, I was on a big delay. All right, everything I think is okay.
all right, awesome. I'm trying to, so there we go. So essentially, I talk about different science things. I'm sorry, I had your video going in the background. I'm like, I'm hearing music and stuff right now.
Are you
Didn't
okay?
realize I okay. I was like, I'm hearing double. Anyway, so essentially I talk about all kinds of different things, and it's not really so much of a kids type of show, but I like, maybe teen and older. Um, because a lot of the stuff we talk about sometimes walks the line of, controversy, um, particularly when different people misrepresent science. So Saturday mornings, I have the Science of, where we bring you up to speed on the latest in science news, and we
At
talk
about
about
the same time as this, right?
10 a.m. on Saturdays.
Okay.
Yeah, 10 a.m. on Saturdays for me. And then, so I talk about, different things that have happened in science research. It runs a gambit on all kinds of different topics. And I also sometimes I describe or educate on a particular topic that my viewers might want to learn about. And then Sundays I have a show called This Week in BS, which is bad science, which Nervardia is my co-host. So I think this Sunday, today actually at 7 p.m., we'll go live and talk about all of the different weight loss stuff that's getting thrown at me on Facebook.
On your channel?
Yes, on my channel. So 7 p.m. Central. We'll talk about that and some of the really hot takes that we're seeing on social media of people misrepresenting science.
Yeah.
And just ridiculousness. So
Yeah,
and it's tongue in cheek, a bit fun, but sometimes I get really ranty on there because I'm just going to point at the whole world right now.
No, I love that. I love getting very in depth. I kind of want to follow in scientist Mel's footsteps a little bit, but Mel, do you only do live things?
Mostly yes, but I will be developing a new thing called called Masterclass. I had been thinking about it for a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm using OpenStax.org, which have free textbooks there, and I'll be generating college level chemistry classes based on the books that they have there. So I'll do general chemistry 1 and 2, and
Okay.
so I'll make that readily available. That will be pre-recorded to where you too can go and learn a bit of chemistry. It's not like a college credit course, but it covers the exact same material. So if you wanted to learn a bit of chemistry, it will be like an open education resource.
All right.
So,
All right. I mean,
yeah.
that sounds about a good description. Yeah, so
It sounds perfect.
everybody should check out Scientist Mel's channel. By the way, we're kind of winging this one today. But so anyway, let's get on with the news. So I think we'll try to spend 10 to 15 minutes on each topic.
Sounds good.
I don't know how much time Mel has.
It's okay. I have plenty of time.
All right, so let's go on to topic 1. Topic 1 is the biology of corals and why are they so sensitive?
Well, I mean, that's a pretty good question. And the thing is, scientists are still trying to learn why they're sensitive. We know that they are. And they're sensitive in that the particular family that they're in, they're cnidarians.
Yeah.
And since they're cnidarians, they don't have like a brain and they don't have a spine, but they're living organisms that are highly sensitive to changes within their environment. And, this isn't indicative just to corals. I mean, there are a lot of different animals across the world that are particularly sensitive to changes, whether it's pH. If we're looking at ocean creatures, you can look at, if you were to ever keep an aquarium, change the pH on that a little bit, you're going to kill almost anything.
Yeah, I used to have a big test, like huge chemistry test kit for my aquarium. And I tried to take care of some corals in aquariums, and they're like, not easy.
Yes, they are highly sensitive, and a lot of that has to do with the nature of what's living in them. So they have a particular type of algae that is, helps them with generating photosynthesis,
Yep.
or they can get energy from that. So corals are just they're extremely important for the biodiversity of our ocean, in that they hold all kinds of different species. A lot of corals you'll find give housing to different types of animals, including fish, anemones. And the thing that's really interesting, I think there's a particular species of coral that only reproduces once a year, and so they're not consistently reproducing all the time. They're very limited in how often they reproduce, which if you have a bit of an understanding of evolution, natural selection, that sort of thing, if you have a species that doesn't reproduce a lot, then the opportunity for them to adapt to any kind of change in their environment is going to cause it's
Yeah.
very limited.
Yeah, I learned that not all corals, but I think most corals, they take something like can live from like 10 to 100 years, and they only reproduce about for 1 week an entire year. And so they have a very long life cycle, and that's one of the problems. They can't really keep up with changing water temperatures. You know what I mean? Like if the longer a reproductive cycle, the longer it takes to adapt, evolutionary wise.
Exactly. I mean, and this is why when they try to show that evolution exists, because there's a lot of pushback with different cultural obstacles with certain groups, to where they like evolution is just a theory, and you're like, make my head explode. But a good
Yeah.
example that you can see, that bacteria, it can evolve quickly because it can reproduce so rapidly. This is how we get superbugs, where they're resistant or antibiotic resistant
Yeah.
bacteria.
That's how we get the coronavirus and stuff too.
Yes, sure. Yeah, that too, because it can evolve
very quickly,
But
right?
since-
like in
Sure.
days, right? Not in, like an elephant takes like what 20 years to reproduce, and yeah, the microbes can do it very quickly.
Yeah, within sometimes hours. Usually it's just a matter of hours. You have an hour, you have a certain amount, and it's exponential growth. So it's huge. So you can see the changes. There's like an actual time lapse. I can't remember which lab did it, but they started out with strains of bacteria, and they were able to track, and you can just kind of see how it grows. It's so cool. But since coral don't have that ability to rapidly reproduce, it makes it detrimental for their ability to adapt. So, because they can't pass their genes on really quick, they're not constantly passing their genes on. It's just like a once a year thing. So you're like,
Yeah.
so there's no opportunity for there to be mutations, beneficial mutations or adaptations within the code to allow them to do that.
Right. So let's get back onto coral. So, the first topic is why, like the biology of them, and basically, I mean, you can kind of explain it. I would think kind of as like an upside down jellyfish, that has.
Oh, okay. You're thinking like their bodily structure.
Right. They're kind of like an upside. Well, no. Also the symbiosis, but I mean, we could talk about this forever, but aren't they kind of like an upside down jellyfish with no brain, and they have the same mouth as an anus, and their little finger things are they're toxic, right? What did I want to explain about that? I wanted to explain the symbiosis, right? Because you're talking about why are they sensitive,
Right?
And I think you correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that the coral itself is not too sensitive, but the algae inside is sensitive. So
the algae inside is sensitive.
Yeah, so I think people have a misconception of what coral bleaching means. Just because a coral is bleached doesn't mean it's dead, right?
Right. So what happens is, the coral and the algae essentially depend on each other in order to survive. The algae needs a place to live, and the coral needs the food that's made by the algae through photosynthesis. And so anytime that coral undergoes some kind of stressor, whether it's heat or a change in the pH of the ocean, is what we call ocean acidification. We can get into that here in a minute.
Yeah, we will in topic 2.
That algae, right. So that algae will leave that coral. And that particular algae that's within it, whenever it gets stressed, it can actually develop toxins. And so those toxins make it harmful for it, and for the coral and for the algae.
And if the algae dies, it just kind of decomposes and becomes toxic. And so at that point, the coral will expel all of its algae.
Right. And that causes it to bleach because all the color goes away. The color comes a lot from that algae.
Yeah, and I think I don't know much about coral, but from what I understand, corals gain about, I think, more than half of their energy from the symbiotic algae. But at nighttime and when they're bleached, they can also they can eat zooplankton themselves.
Yes.
So
Yes, they can.
so like a completely white bleached coral can survive for a while, but it's operating at like 50% energy. So it needs to
Right.
can't find it, they can't move, but it needs to luckily have like an algae that can survive in the water condition,
Right.
and then take it in. I think that's
Also, and you got to also consider what's going on with the zooplankton. So, I mean, zooplankton can be affected by changes within the ocean as well. And so, if there's a diminishing supply of those particular types of organisms, then that's going to affect the coral, as far as its food supply. So,
that's true.
so
All right.
yes,
Uh, I guess I think we can talk about this forever. So is there any really cool biology of coral things that we didn't say yet?
I don't know. I put a link to NOAA, the National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration.
Yeah.
They have a really simple, basic graphic that they put together on coral bleaching. And I put that in the chat, so it gets into a bit more. It's not just temperature and ocean acidification; it's also runoff and pollution. But those all have like kind of a domino effect. But there you go.
Yeah.
As far as coral, I think, I other than the fact that it's crucial for biodiversity, particularly in certain shallow areas of the ocean, if we lose and we're losing our coral reefs. Do you know? Oh gosh, there's the crown of thorns starfish. Are you familiar with them?
I don't know. I've probably seen one, but I don't know.
Okay, there's a crown of thorns starfish, and they actually feed on coral. And I think it's the Bahamas, over in the Bahamas area, there are a particular type of snail that is a predator, the only predator of the crown of thorns starfish. And so a lot of the people in that area were diving and collecting those snails for their shells in order to sell them in their shops. And so what happened was the crown of thorns starfish population grew out of control, and it started eating the coral. And that became a real problem to where there were bounties. They actually had diving bounties on these particular starfish because
to try to fix the ecosystem, like invasive species.
Yeah, to fix it.
Situation.
So just the removal of one thing caused havoc. So I mean, it's important to note that any change of a single thing can affect a domino effect like that. We're seeing that problem with coral. I mean, you have just one thing, and then like it's affecting the algae, whatever the algae is upset with. But that's not the only thing that can affect coral too.
Yeah.
Not just the temperature and all that. So we can get into that here in a minute.
I think maybe we can go to topic 2. Okay, so I guess I mean, how could you easily explain the biology of a coral? Like, I mean, I would just say it's kind of like an upside down jellyfish that takes a very long time to reproduce, and it's not a jellyfish though, because it uses photosynthesis for most of its energy, and that's why
some jellyfish do that though. There are some jellyfish who have a symbiotic relationship with different types of algae. Okay. Yeah, so it's kind of cool how that goes. But yeah.
All right, so I think so. Let's finish this. So why are they sensitive? I think they're sensitive because they rely on algae that it is sensitive itself.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I know that there is, like I said, active research about why it is that particular, that's what they do. So that's how they're sensitive.
Yeah.
But, getting into more of the why, I think, is something that scientists are still trying to sort out.
Right.
So much of that, why that particular algae.
All right, Mel, I'm moving on to topic 2.
Sure.
All right, so
okay.
All right, topic 2. It's temperature and ocean acidification effects on coral and the algae symbiosis. So I know that I actually, when I didn't research this, I thought that ocean acidification was the number one problem for coral. but it's not really, because it really just affects like kind of their exoskeleton. But temperature is actually the problem, because for me, I think temperature is the problem because temperature affects the algae.
Well, temperature does affect the algae. So it is possible for coral to recover from bleaching. It can recover from bleaching. We know this. But there are certain types of coral where they have that calcium carbonate skeleton.
Like the
Okay, that's
limestone
part of
type
their
thing.
structure. Right. And so we've talked a lot about the temperature and how it is that, that affects the algae. The temperature upsets the algae, causes them to stress out. And so the coral, expels them from
Yes.
it, and that
Yep.
causes it to bleach. But now, so as far as the ocean acidification,
Yeah.
so this is where the chemistry comes in, guys.
I took like 3 chemistry classes, amateur.
It's okay. So the calcium carbonate is an essential structure. It's what we see that makes the exoskeletons and the shells of different sea creatures and gives them housing. Different species of coral. There is some coral that don't need that particular calcium carbonate, and then there's other coral that need that shell hard covering. That's part of how they live. So what happens is, since we have an increased amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, one of the places that carbon dioxide goes is into the ocean.
Yeah.
Carbon dioxide.
Oh, go ahead. I think you're going to explain it. I think so. I think it's pretty simple to explain how increased CO2 in the atmosphere dissolves into the ocean. But can you explain how CO2 being dissolved into the ocean makes it acidic?
Yes, I can get into that. So carbon dioxide, first of all, let me just say, if you ever need to clean off your car battery, just get you some seltzer water or some soda and pour it on there, because it will go through and it'll clean off all of those connectors. So what happens is this, yeah, you can pour some
maybe
Coke on
diet,
there.
probably not sugar, probably Diet Coke, yeah.
Oh, any of the sodas will work, because of the carbon dioxide can interact with the different components on the battery. Well, likewise, and for that is the fact that it actually increases the hydrogen ion concentration, which lowers the pH. So carbon dioxide interacts with water. It interacts with water, and so it busts up a water molecule, and it takes on that extra oxygen to become a carbonate ion. Yep. Well, the problem is when you bust up a water molecule and it takes that oxygen, what are the leftover elements floating around there? Hydrogen ions. And that's essentially what makes an acid. And so you have an increase in hydrogen ion concentration, which lowers the pH. Well, the thing is the carbonate ion itself, okay, the carbonate ion itself can interact with calcium to where you have your calcium carbonate, which makes up the shells of the corals and all of the other shell-based sea creatures.
All of them, yeah.
Right. But those 2 extra hydrogen ions that are floating around, they'll pop back onto those carbonate ions, and you end up with something called bicarbonate, 2 bicarbonate ions. And so you're reducing the amount of those carbonate ions to interact with the calcium to make the shell. And also, those extra hydrogen ions can attach to those calcium carbonates of the hard substance that's like the bones of the coral. Those hydrogen ions can go in an attack, so to speak, that particular compound within those shells of the coral and all of the other living marine things that use that shell, and it slowly dissolves it.
Yes.
I got some, if you want to look a little bit about that, I can post a link to this.
I think it's probably a good idea, because I think my audience is like newbie scientists.
Okay.
But I think that's a good chemistry lesson.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely post links.
So the link that I'm posting, if you look, it shows for the pteropod population known as a sea butterfly. It can show what the effect is over a period of 45 days in seawater that has a lower pH um, over time. And so you can see how it's breaking down the shell. Well, that also happens with coral because of the interaction with those hydrogen ions.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a double whammy, right? So the corals, the corals calcium carbonate is being dissolved, and at the same time the rising ocean temperatures are disturbing their algae. It's actually a triple whammy. I forgot the triple one.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's a big problem in general, but it's largely to do with that.
I wanted to explain something.
Mhm.
So basically, coral bleaching, it's not directly related to air temperature. Like, it's not directly related to the air being warmer. It's related to events like hurricanes and stuff like El Nino, extreme weather events. So, like, the thing that wiped out the Great Barrier Reef was not just because the air was warmer. It was because it's kind of like a 1 in 5 year type storm. And we explained earlier that corals take about 10 years to recover after they're bleached. And so what used to happen, and corals, I think corals evolved about 500 million years ago. And they've always been able to recover because these extreme weather events didn't happen that frequently. And what's happening is that these extreme weather events, and we almost can see it today, but you can't really attribute to climate change, but extreme weather events are happening more and more often, and there's almost zero chance that corals will be able to have 10 years. Like a coral reef will be able to have 10 years without an extreme temperature event happening anymore. And I don't know. What do you think about that?
It's okay. It's okay. But I noticed somebody had. I was going to address a question that I'd seen. MC says, "Can humans take corals into rehab or sanctuary, grow them, and put them back in the ocean?" Well, there is some transplant stuff that's going on. I've got a link here from a
Yeah,
couple years ago.
it's called assisted evolution.
Yes.
It's interesting. But, you can explain it better than me, but to quickly explain it, scientists are taking corals out of the ocean, and they're putting them into the lab, and they're putting them into stressful water conditions that are like slightly higher, slightly higher, slightly higher, and the ones that die are the ones that can survive the stressful conditions. They're selecting, like artificially selecting, just like you would do with a dog. And they're doing the same with the algae. They're trying to find algae that can survive extreme conditions, and then combine the right. They're trying to combine like the both artificially evolved things into one to make
Right.
it like.
I'm sorry. I wasn't supposed to answer that question yet.
No, it's fine.
Sorry. 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 Sorry
Oh
about
no,
that.
well let's
Never
do it.
mind.
Was the question about assisted evolution?
A little bit, yeah. They were asking essentially how we rescue elephants or tigers, grow them in the population, cure them, then put them back in the wild. There's lots of different programs that are going on right now. So coral transplant planting isn't anything that's new. I usually just stop in the middle of my streams and answer questions. So I'm sorry.
No, you can. I guess like the point is I want to get through the news.
Yeah, no,
Which
it's
is
fine.
no. I'm just trying to do it differently than normal.
That's okay.
No, I like to. The whole point is audience interaction, right?
Right.
But I guess if someone wants to rewatch it and get through the news, I want them to be able to get through it and like, because I don't want it to like the news shouldn't be like 4 hours long, but the Q&A can.
No, it's okay. Sorry.
So what? I mean, I think I explained that the algae is very sensitive to temperature. The corals is
Yes.
sensitive to acidity.
Ocean acidification, yes.
And so I think, I mean, can we move on to climate change or?
Yeah, we can move on to that. And, if anybody wants to kind of dig down a bit more, I posted a couple of links about some of the chemistry, the consumption of, there's good pictures from the female part carbon program. And that, again, the NOAA is a fantastic resource if you want to learn more about that sort of thing. They've got very well broken, it's very easy to read and accessible. So,
Oh, really? They actually write stuff for like the average person.
yes,
Kind of
yes.
like NASA does too. Like NASA writes like
Yes, yes.
people friendly
NASA
things.
and NOAA work hand in hand a lot,
Okay.
particularly with climate change.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So I think we'll go to topic 3. Topic
Awesome.
3 is topic 3 is climate. This is a big topic, but anyway, topic 3 is like climate change. Can we solve climate change? And what do we think the future outlook is for corals and just for I don't know, the climate in general?
Well, I mean, what climate change is a huge topic.
I know, but we can. I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, so to do it,
It's
yeah. I mean,
okay.
I could talk about it forever, but I think
Yeah.
that obviously climate change is the reason that corals are getting bleached, and there was a study
Yes.
from the University of Hawaii, Manoa, that projects all coral reefs, not all corals, but all coral reefs will be extinct by 2100.
Yeah, I mean, there's similar issues with that as well. So yeah, that's yeah, year 2100, particularly with in largely to do with the ocean acidification, particularly with the calcium carbonate issue,
Yeah.
where that's being broken down, and so
Um.
and that's inherent to the structure of many corals, and not just corals but other ocean creatures. So,
Yeah.
but
I just wanted to quickly explain that coral. I already said it, but corals have been around for 500 million years plus, and they've always had time to evolve. And I think this is terrible that how long has the industrial revolution been around for? Like 200
it's
years?
been around for a while, yeah.
Whatever, but
And
like
it particularly,
200 years
well,
of human activity can like make a species that's been around for 500 million years extinct in that short of
right.
a time frame. It's like that big of a problem. It just makes me mad when people say, "Oh yeah, it's just happening slowly." And yeah, sure, in our lifetime it's happening slowly, but yeah, like
But
in
over
it
the
over the
trend, it's
if it
not.
was 500 million years and we it's like yeah, I hate it.
Yeah, well, I mean, and also it's important to note, particularly when we're looking at CO2 emissions.
Yeah.
That's the biggest issue, the CO2 emissions. So since about the 1950s, we started to see a trend. That's where it started to increase the amount of CO2. There were scientists warning about this back in the 50s. So we've known that this is a problem once it started to become a problem. It's just people have not been listening. And it's not just people, but people in positions of power. So climate change has they've scientists been ringing the bell since the beginning.
Yeah.
Um,
But
so
that's why it's so frustrating. It becomes a political issue where
yes,
you need I actually have a map here I wanted to bring up. I probably
sure,
can't do it. I'm talking specifically about. Well, I can't do it, so never mind. We don't need the map.
it's okay.
But in Queensland, Australia, where the Great Barrier Reef is, there's this.
Yes.
It's like a prime example. So the Australians take the Great Barrier Reef kind of as part of their identity, right? And it's a huge part of their economy for tourism. But at the same time, Australia's exporting coal to India. Like they're, I think, like the biggest coal exporter in the world. And
Yeah.
there has to be some like people need to decide if they want to save the environment or get cheap energy by coal. And
Yeah.
I guess us climate scientists seem to be kind of losing this argument forever.
Yeah, it seems like it. I think the fact is we have the ability to do renewable energy. We have the ability to do that. If you look at, for example, where I live in the South, and TVA is the Tennessee Valley Authority, and they planted a lot of the power lines across the lower part of the southern U.S. And they had
Mm.
lobbied so hard to make it extremely difficult for houses to adapt to solar. There are some places out west where you can rent a solar panel like you would a satellite on your for TV, like
Yeah.
direct TV satellite. But it's just they're not, they actually lobby against that. You can't do that anywhere where the Tennessee Valley Authority is. They won't allow it because
Yeah,
they
it's
planted
super
those
It's
lines.
super frustrating.
It is.
That's
We
kind of.
have the technology. We can do this.
Oh, I
You
know
only need a
that.
certain part of Texas, but it's just, you know, so it's
So
up to people to put
so
people in positions of power that are wanting to change.
so do
So
you, so like besides the politics stuff, do you have any like do you have any like scientific ideas on how we can't just stop greenhouse emissions? We need to like reverse this. Um, do you have any
the
ideas
only
on
way
how
to
to do that?
reverse it is to lower our carbon footprint, and the U.S. is second, China is first. So the first thing we have to do is reduce our CO2 output. Um, it's going to take a while to recover. We've already passed the parts per million. There's this that happened a couple years ago, to where the climate change was reversible. So it's increasing at an alarming rate. So
Yeah.
we'll have to develop technology to counter that at this point,
Well,
the natural process.
I mean,
So
I'm a huge advocate for like algae biofuel, and maybe not even that, but like algae sinks, right? So like you could make a I don't know, like the whole Great Lake covered in algae, and then just which would suck all the CO2 out of the atmosphere, and you could turn it
mhm.
back into fuel, but then it'd go right back into the air, or you could just bury it and it'd become oil in like I don't know millions of years again. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean,
You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
like a CO2
biofuel
sink,
is
a CO2 sink.
right, right. Yeah, we would need a good CO2 sink. You're right about that. But yeah, the the key is going to be using renewable energies and convincing everybody to get on board with that.
Yeah.
That's going to be what it takes. So that's where it's important that science communicators and science educators push to help people understand. The
Yeah.
longer you let this happen, it's going to hit your wallet. And so you have to make it relevant to the people, so they can understand. If you allow climate change to continue, it's going to affect our food. It's going to affect how much food we get. It's going
Yeah.
to affect your heating, your not your heating bill, and your cooling bill. Your electricity is going to get more expensive, and it's going to get dire. So you're going to have a
Oh,
hard time feeding your families. So when I communicate with people about climate change, I this is where I think the solution is. You have to tell people how it's going to affect them personally
I know,
in
but
order
that's
for
such
it
a
to get
problem
real.
because it's happening slowly, right? Do you?
Yes.
Oh, I missed a point. I
Sorry.
really wanted to mention when we were talking before about
It's
like
okay.
reefs have like a huge like ecosystem, right? They have like
Yes.
they're the same diversity as the rainforest.
Yes.
But also so they're cool, they're important for all animals, but also they're very important for maybe not Americans, but for the third world countries as a food source, because a lot of
Exactly.
people can't take like their little wooden fishing boat out into the middle of the ocean and fish for tuna, right? They're fishing on the reef. And so
Right.
it's
Right.
all of this is a step towards losing the ocean as like a viable food source, and that's gonna happen. I mean, maybe not. It won't happen. We'll be probably dead before it happens, but it's gonna happen, and it's gonna be a problem. So how
Yeah.
do you convince
And
people? I want to ask you this, Mel. Like how? So you think you can convince people it will personally affect them? I think you need to,
yes,
because I still see it as okay.
I know.
I
A
see it
lot
as
of
like
people are
two.
saying that's
It's like
far
longer
down the
than your.
way.
It's well, I don't think so, but like
Right, right. Well, see, that's where that's important. Is so when you're talking with people, you have to tell them how it's going to affect them right now. And so, for instance, when I'm talking about the pandemic, and
okay,
they're like, "Oh, well, that just hurts that population there. And then I go, oh,
All
really?
right, get
Well, let
BrainBug
me
in
to
here.
explain to you what's going to happen and the domino effects. I'm like, this is how it's going to affect you personally. So if all of the ICU units are taken up, if, all of the hospital beds, because of this, you say it's a small population. Well, what happens if you get in a car wreck and you're and you have to have surgery or you have to have a bed? You're going to just sit in the hallway on a cot hoping you get treatment soon. So your insurance bills are going to go up. You're going to have and if you get COVID and survive it, that's going to be considered a pre-existing condition in the U.S. So you're going to have a hard time getting health insurance. So it's like you have to take everything and say, this is what's going to happen to you.
Yeah,
And
I
then
need to learn more about
yeah.
that because I know this is a huge problem, but I still have I have a
Right.
hard time explaining how it will personally affect people. So
Right.
I think I'll
So
read
the
about
route
that.
that I go with climate change, we don't have traditional winters anymore where I live. We don't. So the bug population is insane. I can't even sit in my backyard without getting eaten up by mosquitoes. And I love sitting outside. And so it's like now I'm having issues with bugs. I have an ant problem almost all the time because they
Yeah,
never hibernate. They never hibernate because
yeah,
it never gets cold enough.
but
So it's like,
there's like a you have to make the distinction between like a 2 or 3 year weather event and climate change. That's kind of the only good
right.
argument against it, right? Um,
Yeah. So, but that's the thing, but it's every year and it's getting worse and worse and worse.
yeah,
My
and the
energy bills
wildfires, all that
get
crap,
worse and worse and worse.
hurricanes,
We're having
wildfires.
problems with, getting certain food in because it's getting worse and worse and worse. And then people are like, well, GMOs are bad. I'm like, how do you think we're going to be able to have food when we start to have droughts because of
I love
climate
GMOs.
change? Yeah, and I'm just like, we have to have plants that can that or be able to live during droughts now. So we
Well,
have to genetically
they're
modify
not
our
going to be able
food.
to evolve fast enough without our help. It's kind of like it's almost
Exactly.
like
So that's going to
scientists'
make them
job
more
to say
expensive.
yeah, but it's scientists' job to save the world, kind of.
Right. So I go where it's going to cost you more money. It's going to cost you more money. That's usually where I hit it and I explain all the different ways it's going to get more expensive for them. And those people tend to start sitting and think about it. And then they go, okay. And then when they see something happen in the news related to it, then that's where they click. It's not something that clicks right away. It's something that clicks a little bit later, but I'm okay with that if that's still floating in their brain somewhere.
Yeah. So what do you? I mean, I don't think we're going to be able to solve this problem. At least, I don't know. What do you think?
Not for another 20 years, probably. Hopefully 15 if we're lucky. If people get on board, it's going to take people getting on board with this.
I think at least younger people are pretty much. It seems to me younger people are more on board with this.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know that I live in Vietnam, like not America.
Oh, okay.
Everybody's on board with this. We don't have that. I don't know. We don't have that divide of like anti-science. Like everybody wears a mask. We actually have zero coronavirus in the whole country.
Wow.
Because
That's awesome.
everyone's on board. But
Yeah,
we
that's
need
what
the
it
whole
takes.
world to
Everybody's
get on
gotta be on
board.
board.
So you need like an authoritarian global government. I don't know. All right, I think.
We need Star Trek. We need Star Trek.
All right.
That's what we need.
Do you want to say anything else about climate change? I'm gonna try to get BrainBug in here for the Q&A.
Oh no, it's okay. Yeah, I think we've covered lots of things in
All
a
right.
short period of time. So that's awesome.
All right. Move BrainBug up.
Hi, Mel.
Hi,
Chris.
BrainBug.
Hey, hold on. I gotta turn your face on, but we can hear you.
You can hear me. Can't see me.
There we go. Okay.
Hello, everybody.
Hey. Okay. So now we're on to the Q&A section. I have a hard time paying attention to getting through the topics if I get distracted by the questions. So we wrote down some questions to do now. And I want to introduce to you guys who this is. This is Brian. He has a YouTube channel called BrainBug.
Yes, I do. Where we talk about arthropods mostly. So kind of relevant to the coral stuff because oceanic arthropods depend greatly on our coral reefs to survive.
Mm.
We did get some great questions here in the in the live chat. So I appreciate everyone who sent one in, and you can continue to send them in if
do you have
if you
some,
got any
Brian?
more questions.
Do you have some, Brian? I wasn't
do.
really paying attention. So go ahead.
I do. Yes. Our first question is from was this SMR?
Yeah.
What does an individual coral look like? And Chris kind of covered this a little bit. They do look a lot like an upside down jellyfish.
Yeah.
Corals have calcium. Was it calcium carbonate? Or
Carbonate, yeah.
Which makes up the majority of their structure. So they are a little bit different from jellyfish in that way, but the structural form of them is pretty similar. You got a large base with a extending
Little fingers that grab
yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
Also, I know that. So when you see a picture of a coral, let me go back one slide. They kind of look like they're really big, right? But if you look at like these, this isn't.
Some of them.
Okay, here's one. This is not one coral. This is like millions of corals. And the individual thing, it's called a what's it called? Pupil?
I think so.
But anyway, it can be each individual coral, depending on the species, it can be about the size of like a pinhead or the size of like your head. There's actually one called the brain coral. It's like this big.
Mm-hmm.
So they look very different.
So I've got a lesson that I've pulled up again from NOAA. It's coral structure and function.
Okay.
So people who are curious, I can pop that into the side chat and you can have a look. It's got really nice pictures, key concepts and stuff there. So if you're an educator, do check out NOAA, or actually no, NOAA as well as the National Geographic. I'm sorry, I thought this was NOAA. This is National Geographic. They have a lesson and they go through the different biodiversity, the different vocabulary words, and they have a really nice picture of what a coral looks like. So they've got tentacles, they got nematocysts, they have an outer epidermis.
I have that. I have that picture on the show. I just can't switch the slide.
I want to just stress that when we say what coral looks like, it's kind of a trick question because they go through different life cycles where they look like very different animals. And the earlier life cycles are actually basically they fill a plankton role and they're with the plankton floating in the sea.
Yes.
So.
They also have like a larval form, I think.
Yeah, several forms. They go through several stages of life. You have your gametes, they're like a cluster. They float to the surface, and then you have embryos that actually. So they fertilize they do their fertilization process outside, floating in the ocean. And then once they're fertilized, they start to develop. They
plant somewhere.
Certain polyps. They take a polyp form where they actually start to get rooted into the reef colony.
Yeah, and that's one of their chances for survival is because I guess it only happens once a year, but they release the eggs and the sperm and they drift away in the current and they have a chance to kind of settle in a new reef and with like algae that I guess they select. Do they select the algae? I think so, because they can expel it.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
where they're gonna be selected.
And see, that's what scientists are trying to sort out how it is or why it is that they select certain algae over others.
The running theory is that they have chemoreceptors, which help them locate an environment that'll be prosperous for them. The problem we have is with not just the acidification, but also just pollution in general.
Yeah,
it kind of muddies the water and makes it harder for them to locate and to grow in those new locations. We can make efforts to curb the desertification of these marine biomes, but as that's throwing a drop of water into an ocean of problems.
I know that I think part of the Coast Guard, they have a division where they go through and they plant structures. They're like polymers and they allow a space for different types of organisms to be able to treat that like a coral reef, to try to help develop that until they can get more resilient corals to where we can transplant them in themselves. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
We got
thank you.
another
My name is
question?
Brian.
Brian's so smart, guys.
Yeah, Brian, you definitely know more about that than I do. Cool. All right. But anyway, also their color is completely dependent on what type of algae they have.
Exactly. Yeah. So when they bleach, what that means is the algae, when they expel them, that's the color of the algae.
But they can
Let's see.
be this big or this big. They're very variable.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's gonna be
Do you have
teeny,
another
teeny, tiny
question,
little-
Brian?
Our second question comes in from your friend Julie. I see she's one of your patrons. So
Yeah. Hey, Julie.
Julie asked, is coral bleaching happening worldwide?
Yes.
Yeah, I would think so.
It
Yeah.
is for sure.
Okay. There are reefs of Lophelia, which are cold water reefs that
Where?
are a little bit more Lophelia. The Lophelia. Okay, Lophelia is a cold water coral. It's cosmopolitan, and they grow in the more colder environments, and they're holding up a little bit better than tropical reefs. But there are studies out there that indicate that their calcium levels are depleting. I actually have that. I'll post that in the live chat too.
Okay.
They are still doing okay, but their calcium levels are showing a decline.
I have a question for you guys. Because corals, I think they get like 80% of their energy from photosynthesis. Are there any corals that live like deep water with no photosynthesis?
I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of. Most corals that I'm familiar with are the ones that live in the shallow ends.
Like above 50
vintage
meters.
coral?
Yeah, the deep creatures. I wouldn't expect to see any coral down there. But then we haven't completely covered the extent of the ocean all the way at the bottom. But most of those creatures are blind, and so it's they're see-through, and I can't imagine.
Okay, Brian, what was the question you just asked?
Is bleaching happening everywhere?
So
it's cosmopolitan, yes.
Yeah.
So it's happening worse in other places. Oh, and it's happening worse like in certain areas where there's more runoff of like pesticides and mud and nutrients and all that stuff.
Well,
so,
yes.
So like in Australia, the reefs reefs that are maybe 50 kilometers offshore are doing a lot better than the ones that were right next to shore.
Yeah, so you got coastal waters that are going to be the worst, and then you're going to deal with tropical waters, and then it's going to move up more into the more temperate zones and into the Arctic waters. We're going to see some damage taking place and some bleaching taking place, and definitely some desertification.
Okay.
All right. We got another question.
We do.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
This is the one that you kind of dove into a bit there, Mel, before the Q&A started.
Shame on me. I'm sorry.
I was like, no. Can humans take coral into rehab sanctuaries, grow them, and put them back in the ocean like we rescue elephants, tigers, and grow their populations, cure them, and put them back in the wild?
My answer is yes, but I'll let you guys explain.
Well, Mel had some great information. I actually, Secor, which I put the link in the chat earlier when we were talking about this, or when they were talking about this, is a rehabilitation program that's in place. It actually has an option to allow you to donate to help rehabilitate these corals.
There's also reforestationfoundation.org. You can donate there and get involved.
How do you know all this stuff, Mel?
Google is my friend.
I know, but
I go through, and because I've been doing this for a few years now, I'll go through and I know where to find which would be a reputable organization or not, and then I can kind of pull it together. And
it's like
Google.
It's like educational and can tell people how to help. Basically.
Right. Yep.
I mean, that's a good idea. I mean, is that kind of the goal of your channel a little bit?
Yeah.
Or is it like 100% the goal? to teach people?
The goal essentially is to just raise scientific literacy. And I started this kind of around 2017, early 2016. If you go back on my channel far enough, you'll see videos of me streaming from my phone and then holding up pieces of paper where I'm talking while I'm sitting on a couch. And then it grew into something bigger. It's not super huge, but it's slow growth. But that's, I'm okay with that.
It's the correct stance. So, Brian, do you know about any of those like restoration projects?
The only one that I was familiar with was the Sea Corps. So I'm gonna look into what Mel shared here too, because it's
another one is
well.
mote.org, and I posted there on how they do coral reef restoration. Dr. Erin Muller, she's involved with that. You can go through and take a look. And so their nurseries are raising, according to this site, 46,000 coral colonies, 17 coral species, and more than 1,600 genotypes. And so that's different, that's genetic variations within the species. And so that would be like whether or not they have the carbonate exoskeleton, or if they're soft tissue, their structure and that sort of thing. And it gets into a bit more detail there. And then they do have other research programs. If you're like, okay, coral's great, well, let me hear about dolphins. They got you.
Yeah, that's what they need. They need a charismatic poster child. Like dolphins are a great example. People don't really identify too much with a coral. It's not cute or anything, and people like to help animals that are cute. So
corals are beautiful. They are beautiful. People like them.
They are beautiful, but
have you guys snorkeled or scuba dived?
Yes, but not in a coral reef.
Okay, but there is some pretty big human incentive for tourism, just because they're beautiful. I hate that. Like, I think someone would rather save a cute animal than like a spider, right? That's stupid, but
it's kind of funny. There's a lot of back and forth on whether or not we should continue to try to save the pandas, because they don't ever want to reproduce, and their reproductive cycles can vary. So trying to figure out when a panda is fertile.
You mean it's just a waste of time?
It's just like they don't even want to have sex. So it's like you gotta force them.
Well, that's because they're in not natural habitat,
Right. Well, and that's the thing. So trying to save the pandas, they're like, but they're cute.
But they might be a bit too far gone. They might be too far gone, and they don't. Exactly. They don't really matter that much as a coral, right? Like, I don't think panda's not going to cause like a global food shortage. I don't know.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. So, but just reiterating your point, people want to save the pandas because they're like, "Oh, squishy, I want to give it a hug." And I actually had a piece of coral lodged in my foot once when I went.
Oh, ouch!
Ouch! It was just like, gosh, it like got up in, I'm just like, man, I'm like,
it wasn't fire coral, was it?
No. It looked like a little piece of cauliflower. It just stuck in my foot.
Was it dead? Weird. Was it a dead one?
I don't think so.
Oh.
I don't think it was dead at the time. I was a kid, so
I always wear boots. I always wear boots when I walk in tide pools now. That's dangerous,
Yeah. I was just swimming. I was just like, oh, I'm in the ocean and stuff. I was just completely blissfully unaware of everything that could kill me.
Okay. So what was that question about? Like the brain
transplant corals.
I mean, I think of. Do you guys want? I could talk about that forever.
So I posted some links to the different organizations that people can go and have a look and how they can help on transplanting.
I wanted to say
research.
Okay, Wayne the boat guy. It's not a question. He just says we need a zombie apocalypse, which is kind of like I kind of agree with that. The point being that overpopulation is a friggin' problem. It's causing, a mass extinction, isn't it?
To a degree. I actually have thought of a new world order. I thought because when I used to teach high school biology, and so in order to teach natural selection, I often use the zombie apocalypse. And I would talk about that, and I'm like, okay, so if I actually generated a virus, I would talk about all the possible things. What are the things that could generate that type of behavior to make people do that? And I go through all that, and then I would say, okay, now we're going to talk about the zombie apocalypse and natural selection. I'm like, I don't have in. So I had a whole world order set up. I'm like, so if I release this virus, I will have a vaccine in advance. And here's what we have to do: you have to take an aptitude test. You have to take a test, emotional intelligence test. And you also have to take like a type of test, so we can like put you where we're going to put you in. But if you fail the test, I'm like, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go out into the world for 2 years. You survive, come back, I'll give you the vaccine.
Yeah. I don't know.
Like, but if I can place you somewhere in our new world order, I'll immediately give you the vaccine. It's fine. And people were like, that's so evil. I'm like, but is it though? Is it though?
Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead, Brian.
Julie was asking if there were. She said, do corals live in the Arctic too? Yes, there are some beautiful corals in the Arctic, and their habitat is being reduced. So just like the polar bears, the Arctic coral is also threatened by the ice sheets melting, by the ice sheet in Greenland melting. I've got a fly buzzing around me. Sorry. I'm gonna go full Mike Pence up in here.
You guys are both Americans, right?
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah, me too.
By birth, yeah.
So SMR asks a question. I think we should wrap this up in like 10 minutes if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. Maybe we'll try. So SMR asks, this is a good question. How does the loss of coral reefs affect fish, other sea life? What is she asking?
Yeah. I think
So basically, she's asking like what's the effect of losing the coral reef? And I think
You
it's
lose
just
a lot of-
horrendous. You lose like all the biodiversity. You're gonna lose
that's what I was
fishing.
gonna say.
Yes. And biodiversity is particularly important when it comes to sustaining different types of species. Each species there has a job. Okay. So when people talk about the importance of biodiversity, what they mean is every single species has a job and plays a role in the survival of that ecosystem. So if you start dropping off species, then you have certain jobs that are not being performed, and it becomes a domino effect to where all of the species start to suffer. If you along similar lines, if you want to look up something really interesting, look up Operation Cat Drop. And that if you don't know anything about Operation Cat Drop,
I do not.
have a look at that, where they completely tried to eradicate malaria carrying mosquitoes, and it ended up causing the Ebola. Well, no, the Black Plague, yeah, essentially
What?
to take its place.
That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing in Florida right now. Aren't they releasing?
GMO mosquitoes. Yeah, that's.
So yeah, look up Operation Cat Drop. So anytime you eliminate a species, it messes up the balance of all of the different jobs, and so you end up having an infestation of one, which is going to cause the removal of another. And then you're going to have another thing pop up like the Black Plague. And so it's just all of these different regulatory bodies that are controlling this balance within an ecosystem. When you destroy one of them, it messes up everything.
You mean destroy it like all the way to zero?
If you destroy it all the way to zero, yes. But also if you start to limit that population, it's going to cause the other populations to be affected as well.
Well, it's normal for like predator prey populations to fluctuate a bit, but like
Right,
if the predator is just gone, then you have your.
Well, the example that I gave earlier was about the crown of thorns starfish,
Yeah,
and how when the populations of that particular snail, that's the predator of the crown of thorns starfish, was being removed because people were pulling those out of the ocean and selling the shells in the gift shops, that particular starfish started to proliferate, and that eats coral reefs. And so that started to affect the coral reefs to where then they had people that are divers that are going around trying to kill as many as they can because there's bounties on them and they turn them in for money to try to prevent the coral reef from dying off. So even just one thing, you change one thing, it's going to cause other things to be disrupted. And if you don't have enough of the other thing to counter this explosion, then it's a problem. So
yeah, it's important to keep in mind too, like we were talking about the life cycles of coral earlier, that just in the reef is not where the impact is going to be, because the coral are part of the plankton clouds that filter feeding of organisms depend on, and a lot of those filter feeding organisms are part of our fisheries. With tuna and stuff like that are eating this from the environment, and if we don't have coral propagating and reproducing, that's going to reduce that plankton cloud and reduce the population of the fisheries as well. So it's detrimental to us for these coral reefs to be depleted in this manner.
I keep trying to paste BrainBug's channel, but it does Scientist Mel's.
Yeah, I am not Scientist Mel, so
it's okay. You're pretty funny though, BrainBug. So I'll post a link to Operation Cat Drop if anybody wants to read this later.
I hadn't heard of that. I'm interested in that.
And this was on a Medium article. You can find the World Health Organization has something about it. They talk about it. So it was an initiative to go through and try to eliminate the mosquito population that was carrying malaria. It caused all kinds of problems.
but Mel, don't you know they're trying to do something like that in Florida? Like now, it just got approved.
To get rid of mosquitoes?
No, they're replacing the mosquitoes with mosquito that's like GMO resistant to carrying yellow fever or something. It's led by like Bill Gates or something.
Well, that's a bit different.
In August, actually, it's a UK-based organization that modified them. They had some success in Florida. I think they're aiming for Texas next.
Well, so, that's different. That's different than the Operation Cat Drop because they use DEET. They use like DEET to completely wipe out mosquitoes, not genetically modify them to where they're still present as a food source. You know what I mean?
Oh, they're doing this. They're also making mosquitoes that they can only breed in the. Maybe you probably know about this, Mel. You can make like an algae that it can only grow if there's a certain chemical present in the water. So like this mosquito they're making can't breed like in normal water. It can only breed if it's because it has something in its genome that it can't reproduce unless it's in some certain type of water with the chemical in it.
Well,
some genetic on-off switch.
Right. So I mean, so that's good. That means it can't necessarily breed in the wild. It would have to be extreme circumstances. So that's a good thing. So you're not really totally affecting the mosquito population.
Reducing them by stemming their reproductive.
Right.
It's basically genetically castrating their offspring is what
right.
All right.
So that's a bit different, but there you go.
All right. Do you guys want to keep going? I can keep going forever. Or what do you guys think?
Well, it's you want to do? Anybody got any closing statements? We could.
No. Just wondering, are there any more good questions we missed? Are we good?
No, we don't have any more questions, so we're good there.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, do you guys have a question for each other?
What's your favorite color?
Black.
My favorite color?
Easy.
That's right.
What's yours, Brian?
Gray.
Gray?
Oh, gray. Okay. I don't like gray because when I sweat, like you can see it.
Well, gray goes with everything, though.
All right, so that's
What's
Mel's
your favorite
question.
color, Mel?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I like a lot of colors, so I don't know. My favorite color is prism. How about that? I got a prism
like the rainbow
right
type prism.
My favorite color is prism.
No! While I got you on here, I want to show you my spider molted. My big one molted.
Oh my goodness!
So she was 6 inches when I measured her last week. So she's gonna be even bigger now.
Brian, we'll do it. Okay, I'm gonna ask you guys a question. What's your favorite animal?
Oh, I don't No,
Scolopendra hardwicki.
I don't know, man.
What is that?
It's a giant centipede.
Okay,
that is
giant centipede.
There's red and black stripe that looks like it's made out of candy. It's so gorgeous.
But can it kill you?
It depends on what kind of a reaction that you have to Scolopendra venom. Some people are susceptible to it, and some people it's just like a bee sting to them. So it's really, really subjective.
Right.
Usually, if you're healthy, for children and elderly people or people that are in poor health, it could be deadly. But for most people, it'd just be painful.
All right, Mel, could you think of a favorite animal?
I'm just gonna say my dogs right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was gonna say my hamster, but I actually say my chameleon. I think chameleon's super cool. All right, and then BrainBug, your turn to ask us a question.
Ooh, okay. What is your favorite dish?
Does that mean food?
Yep.
Like Kraft macaroni and cheese.
I don't know. I'm probably gonna go with a Cajun dish. I like a really good gumbo. And I can make my own gumbo at home, but like a really good gumbo would be nice.
Ironically, mine is also Cajun. It's I like Cajun catfish.
All right. We're gonna wrap this one up. First, I want to say thank you for the audience for asking us some questions. I think we'd all be bored if we didn't get any questions. I would also I want Mel and BrainBug to explain their channel one more time in case someone joined late. So let's start with Mel. You already explained your channel pretty long, so can you I know, but quickly explain your channel and why people should subscribe if they joined late.
I basically science educator, communicator, all of that stuff. I talk about a wide variety of different types of science. I make it very accessible, so I'll even take hard topics and break it down pretty easy. I talk about different issues as well on Sundays. You can check out the show this evening, actually, 7 p.m. Central, This Week in BS with Nervardia. Have a look there. It's a lot of fun.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I think by watching this, you guys can tell Mel is pretty well educated and well spoken. You should check her out for sure. And then BrainBug, you didn't really get a chance to explain too much about your channel, so
that's okay.
I want people to know not just who you are, but what your channel's about.
Absolutely. My channel is BrainBug, and we use arthropods, usually terrestrial arthropods, to learn about science and all kinds of different angles. We also enjoy tackling pseudoscience and some misinformation that's being put out. So things like the murder hornets and stuff like that.
I did murder hornets. Brian, BrainBug, you also have some real animals with you, right?
Oh yeah, always have some different creatures on hand to help us learn and to explore the world of invertebrates. So if you like bugs and creepy crawly things, we are the channel for you. So
yeah, it's pretty unique. There's not many YouTubers that actually have the animals with them. So definitely check out BrainBug. All right, I think that's the end then. So, right? I don't know. I'm new. This is the second episode.
Good. It's all right.
All right. Well, no. The last thing is I wanted to say thank you so much, scientist Mel, for jumping in and helping me do this last minute.
It's all right. No problem.
And BrainBug
I was happy
too.
to do it.
Yeah, we had no preparation, and I think it went fairly well. So I will say goodbye, everybody, and you bye too.
Bye.
Bye.